Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Minnesota Technologies Association first event of the 2020 year. And if I'm being honest, there's no better way to kick off the year than to learn more about the way technology enables your travel journey. So thanks for joining us today. Let's get started. My name is Jade Denson, and I lead our programming and member experience here at Mintech. And today, we're actually going to be in conversation with Eduardo Valencia, the CIO for the MSP Airport Commission, as he gives us a verbal behind the scenes tour of the way technology enables the airport we know and love. So we couldn't have had this awesome event without the Genesis 10 team, who's been the brains behind having this specific discussion. So Varda Nauen, the SVP of Strategy Business Development with Genesis 10, is a key piece of why we're able to host this event today. So Genesis 10 is a professional services technology consulting company and has been an active member of Mintech for many, many years. Genesis 10 also just won a Techne Award for their talent development program called Dev10. So Varda specifically has been personally connected to Mintech for a number of years as well, as she is an ACE alumni, and she's also on our Mintech Foundation board. So really quickly, for those of you that have never engaged with our technology association before, Mintech prioritizes three things: driving policy and advocacy for our tech ecosystem. The second being working with companies and organizations to address Minnesota's tech talent challenges and opportunities. And finally, my personal favorite, building community and bringing people together to learn, connect, collaborate, and to have some fun. So today is all about pillar 3, community. So we hope you get a ton out of today's conversation with Eduardo. Really quickly, before I get out of the way, want to talk some logistics. So towards the end of today's session, there will be some time for you to get your questions answered. So if you have questions throughout the event, feel free to type them into the question box located in your GoToWebinar dashboard on the right side of your screen. And I will read those questions aloud during the Q&A segment of today's event. This means we want you to start asking questions right away so that we'll have plenty of questions to pepper Eduardo with at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Varda with Genesis 10 to drive this conversation. Take it away.
Thank you, Jade. Thank you for that great introduction. And hi, everyone. Happy New Year. Hi, Eduardo. We're really excited to be here today for this conversation with Eduardo. And before I introduce him, I'd like to just give a brief outline of what we're going to be covering. First, Eduardo is going to give us an overview of the Metropolitan Airports Commission, which is the governing body that runs the airports. It's actually super fascinating, and I'm guessing many of you on this call don't have a lot of knowledge about it, so I think you'll find it really interesting. After that, I will ask Eduardo some technology-related questions. I think we're all interested to understand what travel is like now and how technology enables our experience through that journey. Then we'll go a little deeper into technology and talk about some emerging technologies and what the airport is doing with things like biometrics and AI right now and what it looks like for the future. That should take us to about 45 minutes. And then, as Jade mentioned, we will have a Q&A session. So please do use that question button and start logging your questions throughout there. And then Jade will facilitate the Q&A for the last 15 minutes or so. If we have extra time before 1 o'clock, I do have a bonus question. So I met Eduardo about a year and a half ago when I was lucky enough to have a behind-the-scenes tour of the airport that Rick King organized for our Women in IT group. And I'm guessing that there's a few people on this call who've been on that tour, and you know how awesome it is. And from there, Eduardo and I started meeting regularly with the local large venue technology leaders. And they include all the professional sports organizations, museum, casino, Mall of America, and of course the airport. So we had actually planned a panel discussion from Tech Connect on a topic we called Game Day, which was going to talk about technology related to our experiences when we go to like a football game or a hockey game or to the Mall of America. And it includes things like crowd management and ticketing and parking and Wi-Fi. So a lot of really interesting technology items that many of us in corporate IT don't normally deal with. And then the pandemic hit. So we had to pivot our topic to something else. And hopefully some of you attended that panel discussion last fall that we gave for Tech Connect. But then the local large venue tech leaders started meeting regularly and really talked about a lot of important topics. And Eduardo is clearly the leader, a co-lead of that group. The other leader I think might be on this call today is John Avenson from the Minnesota Twins. So for every meeting we have, Eduardo comes with a plan, usually has a PowerPoint, has a vision to talk about really important topics like how to reopen the venue or how to keep the venue safe and secure if it is open, always using technology. We would bring in guest speakers on different technologies. It's really clear to me that Eduardo has a deep understanding of technology and operations and is very willing to share that. He's also really fun to work with. He's got a great communication style, which you will see, very informal, conversational, transparent. So I think you can tell I feel very highly of Eduardo, and I could go on, but I know how much he hates compliments. So I will pause there, and before I ask my first question, see if, Eduardo, you have anything you'd like to say.
Just a big thank you to you, Varda, the Genesis 10, and then to Mintech for providing both the opportunity and the platform to have this conversation. Looking forward to it. So let's get with it.
Okay, sounds great. So I mentioned we're going to start with an overview of the Metropolitan Airports Commission, and I think many of us on this call here have some hometown pride in our airport. So congratulations to you and your team for being named the best airport in North America for the 4th year in a row. Wondering if you could address, when you talk about the MAC, if part of the reason for these accolades is due to the structure of how the airport is managed, maybe compared to how some other airports are run.
Thanks for the question. Let me try to unpack it a little bit, and I'm gonna go have an overview of the MAC and then kind of what tech impact it has to those awards, and then any of the other variables that may come up. And I just have to confess, I've been with the MAC for about 4.5 years. Prior to joining the MAC, I think I had been to the airport dozens of times, and I really didn't have an appreciation of who run it and sort of how it functions and sort of what's behind the scenes and what makes it tick. So hopefully the overview, I'm a visual person, so I'm gonna go through a few slides. They're relatively quick. Hopefully the overview sets a good context and good backdrop for the audience into sort of what's that reason for success. Created by statute back in 1943, but it's an interesting legal framework because it's a public corporation. It's really an interesting blend of sort of a mission orientation. So we've got a public perspective, service orientation, create social benefit, and so on. And at the same time, the word corporation in there, which really affects the way that the organizations kind of run as a business. It has a lot of entrepreneurial spirit. It has great highlight for innovation tendencies and certainly certain financial instruments. So incredible blend of both public-private best practice. The purpose is relatively straightforward, is known, and make sure that we're promoting air travel, doing so in a way that is minimizing any of the what the economists would call an externality, any of the environmental impacts for that transformation. And then the third bullet, one that I didn't know, is not funded by taxes. It is not local income tax or property tax based. It is really activity based, which goes back to that economic framework and that entrepreneurial spirit of making sure that revenue is at the forefront of our thinking. Who is the commission? You can see the commissioners. Again, just an interesting blend of a corporate structure. My CEO reports to a board. This is the board. It is called a commission, but with a public bend. The governor appoints many of the roles. It is also statewide. It's a cross representation of state and metro. We have also the mayors of both the Twin Cities appoint into the board. So interesting blend led by, as you mentioned before, Rick King as our chair, and who is no stranger to Mentech and also a mentor and leader and a beacon in our community, both in the IT space and in the business space. And I'm sure too many folks in the audience I really cannot underestimate the importance of having that kind of leadership, and the value and the recognition of what technology can bring to the value proposition of an organization. So that is the commission, is a board of commissioners. Let me kind of brush up on our mission real quick. Simple stuff, yet powerful. We're a gateway. We know that we create excitement. Our mission is to connect you to your outside world. We sometimes see that and have been told that we're in the memory making business, and we just want to make sure that that connection is going to be as efficient as possible. Our vision is just as powerful, and it's really permeates everything we do, and I think goes back to a little bit of those accolades and awards we win, which we're obsessed with making sure that we can provide the best airport experience possible. The MAC is much more than MSP, though another thing that I didn't know when I joined it's a network. It is an airport system. There is the crown jewel, the sort of public MSP facility, and then we've got 6 other facilities. We call them relievers. They're called that because they relieve the congestion of commercial sort of passenger aviation on what we call general aviation, and those are things like flight training and recreational flying and even military and a lot of corporate activity. We'll touch back on the relievers when we talk a little bit about the impacts of COVID. MAC itself, 650 employees, kind of like a mini city, no residents, nobody stays here, although we're 24/7, and we've got our own police, our own fire, 911 dispatch, and a lot of the kind of functions of keeping any of our network of airports operational. But it's much beyond just the MAC 650 folks. It is really a web of partnerships. When you visit that you're probably here at Fly. Airlines are a key component of that partnership. We've got concessions, making sure that you're going to have a good experience. We also have partners and regulators. We've got partners that operate in our facility, regulators that regulate what we do, and then many other supporting functions, including the transportation folks that assist people getting in and out of our facilities. This is key because it's within the partnership and within our ability to work as a team that can achieve sort of the results that we're now used to and we continue to strive for. Impact, not going to look at all the stats. These are very important as far as the economic output of the MSP operations, the total jobs that are supported by the operation, 86,000. So we're talking big numbers, big impact within our community. Let me kind of bring it back to your question of saying, hey, 4 awards in a row. What awards? What are we talking about? It's a best airport in class, right? And it is within an industry trade association. We call it ACI. But the important thing, it's survey based. We get compared to all the other facilities of our class within the North America region. It's actually can be compared worldwide. There's 350 airports, I believe, that participate on that. And what's sort of that secret sauce for continuing to achieve that level of excellence? And I had to think about that. And by the way, this is not official. It's kind of my perspective on what makes it tick, what makes it continue to be award-winning. And it's a combination. I think it's a combination, as I said, of being customer-driven, making sure that our vision of excellence is at the center of everything. The partnerships, you should see the activity of all these partners that I had on that slide, working with each other in order to achieve the best experience possible. That's quite unique, by the way. There's a talent, people in the right spots, and being able to and empower to do the right thing. The structure, as I said before, is this combination of public but entrepreneurial and business oriented. And of course, it wouldn't be a MinTech topic if it wasn't for the awesome technology that we've got. And I know that this may be a little self-serving. Oh, the CIO is saying that technology is part of the mix, but it's really not my doing. It's the byproduct of the investments that the commission has made in technology. Recognizing that technology a lot of times is the glue that is going to provide connection between all those partners and enable them to perform at a different level. Just a quick example, for example, we've got a very involved camera system, 3,200 cameras, digital cameras throughout the facility. We leverage the same camera systems for all partners. That is very unique. TSA uses the same one, the airlines use the same one. It creates a lot of efficiency, reduced costs, allows us to operate really at a different level. Just a view of kind of the tech itself, some things that relate to the airport itself, very industry specific type of things. A lot of these systems are enterprise grade, as I said, 24/7, 365 type of operations. So a lot of investments in making sure that things are never down and that we can facilitate operations, particularly because everybody's leveraging the same systems. A lot of emphasis on security and safety. Some things, as I said, unique. Some things are run of the mill that a lot of the audience would recognize as sort of the IT bread and butter, with some emphasis on things like networks. I think we're up to like 19,000 miles of fiber connecting our telecommunication rooms in order to facilitate all of that activity between all those partners. And I think that would be the best I can do on a quick overview of the MAC, and also set a backdrop for what I think brings us all that success.
Great, thank you. That was a really good overview, and it's so good to hear about the Commission's leadership in investing in technology. Not a surprise, knowing Rick and just understanding how cohesive it is run makes me feel safer to travel. And I love what you covered. You didn't cover my favorite thing, which is the bird expert at the airport, but we could save that for another conversation. So now let's move on to talking about some technology. When the pandemic hit, how did the environment change at the airport, and how did you adjust to make the experience different for travelers? And how is flying different now?
Long question as well. Let me try to talk a little bit about the impact of COVID, because I think it's probably instinctively known, but I just want to make sure that we cover it. And I thought about the question, and I thought a visual would be quite telling. Sort of pre-post, very similar area. It's actually the different view on it, but it's the exact same area, sort of on a normal day. And then post-COVID, I think is quite telling. We see 35 to 40,000 people go through security every single day, populate all that area, and that went almost to nothing. Let me kind of follow it up with some statistics. I know it's a little busy. Just wanted to give you two slides on sort of the impact by the numbers. This is a variable that we call employments, and you've got two ways to see it, sort of on a percent change versus 19 across the top, and kind of the totals at the bottom with two columns, 19 and 20, right? And you see kind of how the growth at the beginning of the year was 6 and 8% month year to year, and boom, right, where it hit in April, the way 95% of load, and then you can see the totals across the bottom. We've some coming back, but we're still at a third, right, or 66% reduced. Different metric for you to take a look at, the audience to recognize sort of the impact of it. This is routes. From the green, kind of how many active routes we had through the bump, and then how many cancellations we had on that same time frame. I don't want to give the impression that it's all doom and gloom. Things are coming back. We have a significant amount of activity, but we're still at 30-40% of what we had, depending on the metric, and it's slowly coming back. One that we talked about relievers before, just wanted to recognize the silver lining of that activity. That reliever airports have actually increased in activity. A lot of general aviation, a lot of interest in flight training and recreational flying. It's been quite popular, and that's great for our community and great for our reliever system. It's just the wisdom of making sure that all of that is balanced within one set of operations. And then a view of what's ahead of us, right? The impact is not seen as something that is just going to vanish. The forecasts that we have, you see the work budget, because that's what we budget for in order to actually have correspondent revenues. that we think is going to take a number of years to recover to get back to 2019. Future is unknown, but that is what we're seeing it. To the portion of your question on what's different, let me try to cover that piece of it, and I want to make sure that, and I think everybody would know that we're considered critical infrastructure, so we never closed. So there's been an evolution of those things that have to be emphasized, and these have become relatively common now, but they were evolving in time, and we've tried to concentrate in these areas around cleaning, sanitizing, making sure that face coverings, we passed an ordinance in order to mandate them a number of months back, and now they're day-to-day type of expectation in many of the locations. Social distancing, making sure that we've got shields. And one of the areas around contactless services, also known as touchless services, that have emerged, and a role of technology to facilitate ways by which we can reduce contact and therefore be more COVID friendly. The story is important. Yes, we can have an emphasis on those 6 areas. How do you make sure that you let folks know? So, and the goal is to make sure that the travelers, that the people that visit us, are going to be safe and feel safe. All kinds of, we've got just a great communication and marketing team. All kinds of, if you visited our facility, all kinds of different channels, right? Even audio channels, doing these reminders, making sure that people are going to be both informed before they fly, while they fly, and that we were promoting traveler healthy, they take healthy steps, and they also think about how to protect others themselves. On the cleaning side of the house, just to give a highlight, that is not just us saying that we've got a good program. We look for accreditation, right? Different entities come in, take an evaluation, making sure that we're doing things by the book. So a lot of transformation and a lot of change in practice on how we were doing things before. One last note on this particular topic, and before we move into the technology side of the house, which is the reality that we're not done. We've been on this mindset of being able to pivot, being able to change, being able to move to where the challenge is going to be. I am sure that that's not done. Hence the role of technology and innovation and partnership in order to make sure that we're meeting the requirements necessary and adhering to the best practices. In your question a little bit, I could detect, and I think that some of the elements that we've put in place are probably going to be here to stay post-pandemic. They're particularly around the contactless area. I think that there are just improvements that unfortunately were brought up by the pandemic conditions, but I think are only going to be enhanced over time.
Okay, thank you, Eduardo. Hearing about even the accreditation and cleaning is another reassurance from our airport on what a good job you're doing responding to this. And I think this also really shows everybody how deeply involved Eduardo is in the details of the airport, not just from a technology perspective, but with this proactive communication. My next question has to do with more on technology. Technology has really changed a lot of industries now, and I'm interested to understand how you're leveraging it at the airport to give us, a more seamless experience or a touchless journey.
Thank you. I thought about this question, and we can just kind of speak for technology itself and a little bit in a vacuum. And I wanted to bear with me on how I try to respond. That I wanted to sort of go back to these awards and this sort of recognition that we've had in industry, and see if I can kind of tie the dots in a way that it makes sense for the audience. And it's with this backdrop. If you're doing well, you're receiving awards, you're winning accolades. I didn't mention it before, but we've received this role of excellence, right? It's only 7 airports worldwide that have been in that recognition. So you're doing something right So what's the role of technology in order to improve that? And we gave some thinking, and our commission actually gave a lot of leadership a couple of years back to point us in a direction that I'm going to try to explain, and then I think it'll be evident where the technology component emerges. And this is sort of an eyeful, right? It's a, I would call it the IKEA version of the travel journey, or the kind of present in a visual journey of what happens when folks are going to engage in air travel, and it's got different sections of it. They're color coded on activity that happens sort of pre-facility. Kind of the bottom left, it starts with somebody trying to ideate where they're going to go, pick the time, make the arrangements, probably pay for a travel, so unpack at some point, and they choose a way to get to the facility. And you go through all that journey in the orange, that is things that you would think that can happen in any airport out there. And then you get into your flight activity, and then you get to a destination, and then you emerge on the other side. And it's actually looking at these steps, and the direction that we've been given is recognize that there's all kinds of stakeholders in this journey, that there's many different touch points, that there's many handoffs in between them, and that there's a lot of friction, and there's a lot of things that could be done differently. And it's not something that we really had a lot of emphasis on. We've got our own terms for that. We call it journey and seamless journey, but what we're trying to do is put really passengers in the middle, at the center, and try to highlight and emphasize what would we do in order to enhance their experience, no matter where they're at in that journey. And this emerges from the business side of the house. This is just an example. This is an actual example of the type of work that we've done from in partnership with our strategic planning and marketing and communications that look at consumer profiles, and that try to become customer centric, and that we get to journey mapping of individuals and what they want. And within that context, the role of technology emerges. What can I do? What can the CIO of this organization do to recognize the friction and try to remove it? I'm going to talk just about a few examples. These are real examples. It's not in the hypothetical. So if different representation, but putting somebody in the middle, putting Varda right in the middle and saying, hey, we've got a number of steps. So are there things that you can do to try to remove that friction and provide a seamless activity? We're going to talk about it very quickly. Improvements we've done in parking, we've done in security, food delivery, and so on. Some of the things were positioned very well for the pandemic. Some of them we just had to accelerate. So these are not just pandemic-specific activity that we've done in technology. It's just the role of technology in travel in general. So point of friction, parking, right? I remember doing some of the focus groups and talking to folks that would go, I can reserve my air travel, but I cannot reserve parking. So is it going to be full? Is it not? So we introduced pre-book parking right prior to the pandemic, positioned us very, very well in order to make things as touchless as possible. So you can go to mspairport.com. You can do it right now. You're going to see it prominently found right onto the book with us, right? And then be able to get the parking set up ahead of time, which also allows us to communicate with you directly and make sure that that portion and that element of friction is at least reduced. We also know you get to our parking facility. This is just on the pilot stage. You get to parking, and how many of you, particularly under busy days, it's like I can't find a spot. So what can we do to use technology in order to promote removing friction from that step? From an economic perspective, we're already in a good spot. Hey, you're parking with us, but what can we do to use technology in order to enhance that? In this case, we're looking, and we've got it installed in a number of ramps, and conducted surveys to see to what extent does it make a difference, and how does it move the needle to try to be to promote excellence and be more customer driven. You're out of the parking ramp, you're coming into our facility, and normally you have to go through security. How can technology enhance the security experience that we've got. You're looking at a couple of examples. One of them is around automated security lanes. That is really designed, by the way, we don't do it. It's in partnership with TSA, but we've brought them in as quickly as we can. It is try to uncouple the divesting nature of the sequential divesting nature of our checkpoints, and make sure that people that divest at different rates don't get in front of each other. And then on the bottom, you can see that's kind of like an aerial view of our checkpoints. We look at where people are waiting in order to estimate wait times. Once we estimate wait times, we can actually guide people to different security locations. We can follow it up with both visual and auditory direction in order to try to get folks through security by anticipating how long they're going to be and where to go. We have them now in what we call the sterile side, and you want to consume our award-winning concessions program. Many restaurants, some of them are right now closed, but many of them are in the facility, and we had up until now ways by which that can be only physically engaged, long lines and so on. What can we do from a technology perspective to introduce contactless ordering? How can we introduce digital services? How can we introduce a digital marketplace within our facility? How can you go online once again and be able to say, I want to order food on the go, or I want to order food delivered? Hey, my favorite place is McDonald's, but I happen to be at the bottom of G. I'm not going to be able to have time. Is there a way that actually that food can come to us? It's a program we've introduced. We've got, I think, 15 participating concessions right now. Our goal is to have it throughout the facility for all the options that we can offer, and in a way that, imagine you're a connecting passenger. You only have 40 minutes. You want a special type of salad, you can order it right on the go. It's there right at the time. We actually coordinated with the airline, so when you're landing is when the order gets executed. So very interesting ways. Some of these improvements I think are here to stay post-pandemic as well. And then the last item, it's a little bit more in the weeds, but incredibly powerful. Point of sale integration. We've got great concessions. They got point of sale systems, who's buying what when. They've got a great view and optimize sort of their operations in isolation, but they don't know what's happening within the ecosystem, right? How we have, the airport's got great intel on passenger flow when people are going. They have great intel on consumption patterns and activity. What happens when you move a flight? What happens when all of a sudden there's a snowstorm and 3 get canceled or delayed? What is going to be the impact on that activity, and how can we anticipate those type of operations in order to make sure that, and this is in the hypothetical, throw the fries in the fryer because we just had to do a flights canceled on the top of G, and we are anticipating, because we can see it historically, that is going to drive consumption up. So 5 examples on ways by which technology can assist with the travel journey. There's, as I said before, about 300 systems. So this is just a little example on how putting the customer in the middle emerges sort of the role of what we're trying to do, and how that's positioned as well for COVID and beyond.
Great, thanks. I love that. I love the idea of the pre-booked parking and being able to order the food. And it's interesting to see the evolution of the seamless journey that you're creating, and be almost fun to have another conversation in 6 months and see how it's changed and what else has been added. So, and also the data analytics part, I think a lot of us would be really interested to dive deeper in that too. So thank you. Let's move to my last question, going a little more into technology. Can you tell us about the use of biometrics and AI currently, and how it could impact our future travel, and if there's any other technology trends that you're seeing?
Thanks for the question. You know, it's fascinating topic, and both on the biometrics and AI, and I'm probably not going to do it justice, because just have a few examples, and it's an area in which I believe we're scratching the surface, and we continuously look at ways and use cases that we can probably move the needle in that space. Let me take biometrics sort of first. How can we leverage it, and how can we in partnership leverage it? Because this is not only an airport activity, but it's a partnership as you will see from the example. Different sort of view of that journey. We had a very long one before. This is abstracted to sort of areas in which you're going to have to produce credentials, right? You're going to have to get to these steps, and you may be able to skip the first one if you don't have bags to drop. But if you do, you're probably going to be either doing check-in, insert your credit card or ID in order to actually initiate. Same thing with backdrop security, boarding, and so on. Great opportunities to actually, if the credential can be abstracted to you, I would argue that we are the best ID of us. So if the certificate of authenticity that we carry in our wallet can be eliminated, and there's a way that in a private friendly way that can be identified against me, that is a critical role in biometrics to remove a lot of the paper pushing and presentation of credentials that we've got today. Let me kind of talk about an example, and once again, predates the conditions that we have right now, but I think is going to both be here to stay and be enhanced over time. So Delta back in 19 included biometric exit, and many probably some of the folks in the audience have been able to experience it. It's relatively simple and quite elegant. It really, airlines always have a manifest of who is on a flight. This is for international flights. They can cross-check that against the CBP, which is the Custom Border Protection Records. They can create a profile. It's called a gallery of that activity. And then it's relatively efficient to match the biometric features of someone against that passport picture. That's really what you're doing. You're authenticating yourself with a passport. Well, that picture is being matched against you automatically, and voila, you don't have to present um, uh, your credentials, right? And in this case, a passport. And it feels almost like magic. That recognition is sub-second, and because it's just a small subset of individuals that may be on that flight, and as soon as that is boarded, which has got efficiencies on how quickly that can happen, and in the just the reduction of the whole paper shuffling that takes place. Is something that airlines are very interested in continuing. We're looking at ways, and very soon will be announcements on how that is also being done on any of the arrivals. Well, wait times as it relates to international arrivals are high. How can we look at biometric technology in partnership with CBP in order to enhance that portion of the journey? Let me switch from biometrics to a little bit of AI. I know that this may be a little cryptic, but we're just obsessed with passenger flow. We look at ways by which we can collect data, and a lot of times leverage AI in order to try to find out what is it that we're not being able to tell in the way that passengers are going through our facilities. So in this case, it's just we look at proxies of Wi-Fi intensity and some of the sensor activity that we have, and we try to come up with ways by which we know where people are for how long, to do all kinds of things. We try to optimize. I know it sounds simple, but the timing of cleaning, right? Should we do timing? Should we do cleaning based on a schedule, or should we do cleaning based on use? And that is very, very relevant to the conditions that we've got around the pandemic. The latter is much more efficient, actually saves on resources, and it provides a better experience. So how can we use AI to estimate who's where when, and in order to actually change operations and or even change the type of concessions that we offer, and so on. It's a good example of work this is actual work that we're doing, correlating that passenger flow and an operational and concession activity. I'll give you one last example. This actually evolved in the context of the pandemic, and it's a little bit hard to see, and I apologize for that, but this is an actual view of a checkpoint. This is the South Security checkpoint in the terminal 1. This is technology that we that we had. It's sensor based. It's completely private, but it detects how many individuals are waiting in time. We detect the throughput of the checkpoints, and therefore we come up with time estimates. Well, we threw AI at it and said, all right, so if we know how many people are there, can we try to come up with a way by which we can look at the density of where they're waiting and come up with this called physical distance indicator? Can we come up with a metric that is arbitrary that can give us the density and distance that people are observing in order to do what? Highlight trouble areas. How can we optimize the waiting area? How can we look at situations? It's probably very hard to see. I don't know if I can click on here, but it's hard to see. Let's see if I can get this laser pointer thing. Right here is an area that you see a little shade. That shade is created over time. It's telling us that there's a densification of individuals that are within that time frame, that we can probably look into what's creating that situation and how can we proactively improve it. So it's a good example of an pre-existing, I don't know how to get the laser thing off now. Hopefully it goes away. A good example of a pre-existing technology in which we can try to throw some AI machine learning at it to try to give it a different spin on ways by which we can improve operations and continue to drive excellence. And those are the examples that I had on the biometric side and AI side. Many others. Some of them are behind the scenes, things that we work in other aspects that are not so passenger oriented. I thought that these would be probably the most interesting to the group. And that is what I had prepared for your questions.
Thank you. That was awesome. I love seeing those aerial views of the checkpoints. It's super interesting. I'll turn it over to Jade now. Hopefully you've gotten some questions from the audience along the way.
Oh, of course. Eduardo is such a fantastic storyteller. There's questions piled in, which is good. Awesome. You covered so much in such a short time. I'm excited to keep learning more. So we do have a few questions. One of the ones that I want to ask right away is, it was regarding facial recognition. Let me just pop it out here. So facial recognition, if we use it, but the location we're traveling to does not, and you forget your passport, I'm wondering about this. Can you talk a little bit more about sort of different airports and what they're using and how that impacts using facial recognition?
That's a great question, because it actually leads to another topic, and I'll just touch on it real quick. So the stage of where biometric use for facial recognition is not a replacement for the type of artifacts that we have to bring for travel. It's not a replacement process. It's an efficiency process on a subset. So I am not aware of any international travel that is allowed without a passport credential, and a valid one for that matter. Not my area of expertise. There may be certain, I'm quite sure that there's no deviation from that rule. So as you're checking in, as a matter of fact, there's a passport validation step within the check-in process, and that is going to have to take place, and that passport is going to be validated for expiration date and so on. It is from that time where that passport, where that credential needs to be presented, that facial recognition or other biometrics, because facial just happens to be one type of technology, right? It's what I use these days to unlock this device. But I don't know if you guys remember when you use your thumbprint, or that you use something else, right? So biometrics is one of the, again, also not my area of expertise, but is one of those things in which you can think of iris, you can look at facial, you can look at attributes, your fingerprints, whatever it may be, that are critical, that you are you and you're unique, and what are we going to pick in order to try to make that accreditation of you being you as seamless as possible. But you touched on the point that I think is an important one, which is the network. We're very, very, very aware that I don't know if anyone that sort of travels to itself, I don't think that there's any loops that you get on a commercial flight and it comes back to the same location. And maybe someday, right? But certainly not now. Maybe space travel. But the point is that we are very aware that you connect, and our mission, connecting you to your world, right? So we understand that there's a network, and we work diligently within that network in order to actually toss that same challenge to the network or facilities. I personally work in tandem with many of my peers within, particularly, we look at the destinations of the majority of our travelers, and we develop relationships in order to say, if you're using this technology, how can we make it as seamless as possible? How can a device that traverses from here to Seattle going to be recognized by the Wi-Fi systems seamlessly, so you don't have to re-authenticate? And how do we make sure that, for example, biometric technology is going to be used throughout the journey, not just in isolation? Enormous amount of work in the community at many different associations, recognizing that we're a global industry and that it's that journey that we're all interested in optimizing.
Awesome. Well, I want to turn to another really good question. So given that this sort of context you laid out for us with how the airport is operating right now is the next normal, as a CIO, where do you see the greatest areas of opportunity for innovation at the MAC from a technology perspective?
I think so we've got a sort of strategic plan internally driven or pointed in kind of two dimensions. One is on driving what I would call support excellence. Like when I introduce my team, I say that we support and enable, right? So we've got a significant amount of resources and time trying to provide the best services that we can provide to the organization itself and to all the partners. So we've got significant emphasis on making sure that, really, quite frankly, that we're the best IT shop that we can. The enablement side is where a lot of the innovation takes place. There's innovation within the sort of service offering side of the house, but the enablement side is where the opportunities sort of emerge. How can we work in ways in partnership to remove friction and be able to really add value? Biometrics is one of the areas. AI is one of them. Optimization opportunities. We're relatively new on this journey on thinking with customer centric goals, making sure that we're not seeing when you're jumping on an Uber or you're getting into Metro Transit, that we're thinking about that situation in order to try to optimize it and create ways by which your Uber app is going to give you wait time data. So you know what you're expecting in the facility, whether or not you're parking with us or you're just taking the transportation. So we look for ways in which technology can actually, or my role is to enhance sort of the base, and at the same time look for innovation in ways that we can make the journey really as seamless as possible. A lot of opportunities on the latter, simply because it's been kind of a newer element of our evolution as an industry.
Awesome. So this one's somewhat logistic, but you talked a lot about sort of the concessions and using the mobile platform for ordering. Do all concessions participate with MSP's mobile ordering platform?
Not yet. We're working diligently on that, particularly given the conditions that we have with COVID. We would like to enable this contactless opportunity. You can go online right now, mspairports.com, and you can just see right on the food and see what concessions are participating. Encourage any that may not be participating to do so. We provide the platform, we provide the partnerships to do so. We actually provide the training, we provide the Wi-Fi, we provide any of the integration is there. It's been a little bit of a difficult time just because of how I want to do it justice. Our concessions have been in a very difficult situation for quite a while. So it's not something that we want to be punitive about, but it is something that I think is a customer expectation, and then over time something that we intend to maintain and also enhance channels on. We're working in partnership with airlines in order for your airline app, you can order that same food both delivered and on the go. And that is where we're in close partnership with Delta and with United in order to make that happen. So it can be multi-channel. At some point, it'll be hopefully with some of our Ubers and Lyfts, right? That condition of seamlessness is what we're trying to push with all of them. with I feel that our concessions is just a matter of time until they all jump on board.
Awesome, awesome. So someone asked a really good question. How has the new hotel helped the airport in IT technology, and also how has it introduced any new challenges potentially?
I wonder if that question came when I threw that picture up, because that is that beautiful hotel on the skyline, and that's, by the way, our new parking ramp. So I know it looks a little bit sort of artificial, but it's real. And that sign, which I think the picture caught the frame in which it was changing, is one of the assets that we want to leverage in order to inform and also monetize the advertisement that can come out of it. The hotel, I wouldn't describe anything that they've brought into the mix as a challenge. We had to incorporate. We're in construction. And we have been a part of our evolution over the last few years. It's been remodeling the front of the house, and that has created a challenge for actually just making sure that the routes are going to, we can get the folks that are staying in the hotel there and back seamlessly. There's a skyway that actually drops right into the hotel. So I think I would describe it as opportunities. They are a partner. We actually talk about the conversation we had before. We worked with them in order to extend our Wi-Fi systems into that location, right? So
Awesome.
we didn't want people to go into the hotel and then all of a sudden, boom, they drop and then they go into the facility and so on. So we worked with them. There's ways by which that can be coordinated. I just see them, I see their inclusion and participation as just a great asset for our community, and the views of that top floor are, in my opinion, that can't be beat, because you can see the sunset of both skylines with a plane, just like you're seeing in the picture, sort of flying by, and it's absolutely breathtaking. So it has been only positive. At the same time, they run and operate a hotel, and we only or we, at least from a technical perspective, we interface with them in any of those touch points in order to make sure that those that are staying at the facility are going to be or that are not going to have friction when they go between our locations.
Awesome, awesome. So this person started off with, thank you for your insights. I could totally agree. You shared so many awesome things. So as you deploy technology solutions, what do you use to examine the ethical implications of that technology? So I assume this person's probably thinking a little bit about how you're leveraging AI and biotechnology and stuff like that. But if you could speak to what goes into that process.
It's a good question, and it's actually a question that as we look at big data and we looked at technology use in general, came up immediately from our board, from our commission. We have a process by which any of the uses that we're considering have to have a review with both our legal and ethical groups in order to see if there's any flags. Are there any considerations or concerns that we should bring to a policy setting in order to have it discussed? We have not brushed up against too much of it, because a lot of it has been sort of in the beginning phases of it, but that is the way that we've tried to safeguard Eduardo not going crazy and going down an avenue that is going to either hurt us reputationally, that is going to enable the wrong thing, and or not be consistent with really what our commission would like us to do. So it's top of mind, and at the same time, we want to make sure that we're leveraging what we can in order to create a better experience, which is part of our vision.
Awesome. This is a really good question and super topical right now in 2021. So can you talk a little bit about the challenge of having a green environment, how technology is used to help that aspect?
The sustainability is cool. It's actually called out within our within the statutory authority that we have, and highlight of our organization, that we support and enable the sustainability from a standpoint of any of the metrics and any of the KPIs, any of the communication that needs to be done around it, and from the looks at how can technology enable that, right? And
Mhm.
are there ways by which we can optimize? Didn't touch on it too much, but this is a big building, and we have a lot of buildings, and they consume a lot of energy. And building management is one of the systems that we maintain. And how can we make investments in order to make them as smart as possible? Many locations can benefit from different technology investments to optimize temperature, to look at weather patterns in order to anticipate them and reduce consumption when you know it's going to get hot in 8 minutes, or in 8 hours. So we look. It's a collaborative between our leadership within the green side of the house, as you mentioned it, to enhance ways by which we can support and enable that business function as well. We also always look for opportunities. I think it can be seen right on the picture. It may be a little difficult. Right on the old parking ramp, all the skyline is solar panels, right? Partnerships that we've had in order to try to be as conscious as possible and sustainable as we possibly can.
Awesome. So it's a really good question that came in. So especially going into 2021 and the year ahead, how have you had to think about pushing out future technology spend based on reduced funding and all the things that so many businesses have experienced? I guess where's the priority, and where are you putting the money these days when it's not coming in as frequently?
Great question, and one that occupied us, not just the technologies organization, but the organization in general. We're not tax based. Our revenues come from fees. And I didn't want to drive the conversation to a financial piece, but there's an entire finance shop that can give the outline of that. The conversation was twofold, really. Well, first of all, what can technology delay? How can we reprioritize? We have a strong portfolio of investments. Are there things that can wait? And we went through the exercise, and probably like many organizations, made those decisions. The second side of that was the really interesting piece, which is the questions that we received from our leadership group, from my CEO, on what can technology do to eliminate cost, make us more efficient, reduce variability? Are there ways by which we can drive, not just a road expense, but we can drive? And we early on worked on 12 different proposals. Most of them didn't require a lot of investment. Most of them did require some rethinking. How are we going to work differently? How can we eliminate printing? I know it sounds like it may not be all that expensive, but we're highly federated. We're in many locations. Are there ways by which we can consolidate our printing? Are there ways by which we can look at life cycle replacement differently? Are there ways by which we can invest in certain technologies that can create efficiencies that are going to be paying for themselves? And we pursued some of those. We didn't pursue all of them, but we looked for ways by which technology investments could actually advance the efficiency of the organization, not just reduce footprints. We've got a long story on sort of how many projects and jobs we've got in the queue, but we delayed many of them, and we also invested in some of them in order to create those efficiencies and really feed the machine, right?
Awesome. Well, you are so good at timing. It's impeccable. We are at time. We had a few questions that we weren't able to answer, but Eduardo, just want to say thank you so much for providing such great insights about how technology drives one of our favorite places here in Minnesota. So thank you for being here today, Varda. Thank you so much for driving a good portion of this conversation and for bringing the idea to MinTech to have us have this conversation. So have a good rest of your day, everyone. Continue to see you at our events in the future. We have a few queued up here. WLIT's coming down the pipeline. Tech Talent's coming down the pipeline. It's a year with MinTech again. Thanks for kicking it off with us, Eduardo. Have a good one.
Thank you, Varda.
Thank you.
Thank you.